Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on service call quoting and KEY2ACT, presented by Earth Solutions. My name is Emily Taggart, Marketing Programs Manager at KEY2ACT. Before we get started, I'd like to mention all of our attendees will be muted throughout the webinar, but if you do have a question at any time, please feel free to use the questions module on your toolbar. We'll answer questions towards the end of the webinar, and if we run short on time, we'll follow up with you directly via email. Today's session will be recorded, and we'll share that recording with all of our attendees just as soon as it's available. That being said, I'd like to introduce our presenters today, Mike Dandy and Todd Ross from Earth.
Thanks, Emily. So thanks, everyone, for joining the webinar today. I see there's quite a few of you on there. What we're going to take you through today is one of our newest modules that we've added to our Quadra estimating umbrella. From job cost to service contract, and in this case, our service call quoting. So just a bit of background on the app or the module itself before I get started. It's what we consider a hybrid application. Therefore, it can be just a regular website like you see here today that I can log into, or it's also a mobile app. So it's something you can download in the iOS Apple Store or Google Play for Android, or again, just access it from your desktop, whether you're sales people in the office receiving these leads coming from the techs out in the field, or you give special permissions to your more senior techs and allow them to use the app entirely on their phone and create quotes and send them out to customers and get them approved without even coming into the office. So it really depends on your organizational structure, your internal workflow for approvals, and how you guys set up the permissions. But the concept is that this can be used from your desktop, your browser in the office, or remotely as an application that you would download in the store on your phones or tablets or iPads and whatnot. So how we've designed the application itself when it comes to service call quoting is this notion of your techs maybe are out in the field, maybe they're up on a rooftop and they're working on a service call that they had assigned to them potentially through mobile tech. And while they're there doing that work, they see another opportunity to maybe do some more repair work on another rooftop unit. The customers typically aren't up on their own roof. And he would create what we call in our application a recommendation. So recommendations, if you want to relate them to like a CRM type system, Salesforce or Dynamics CRM, they would be kind of your leads, is what we're calling recommendations. You're recommending to the customer that you fix this because it's going to cause other damage. And you can keep creating these recommendations. From there, the customer can come back and say, yeah, sure, give me a quote for that. And you can have one quote to many recommendations. And this could be done by the tech, or it could be done by your sales staff as they're getting these new leads coming in. And that's kind of the structure that we've followed. So it starts off as a recommendation. It will then turn into a quote. It'll then go through your internal workflow, and then upon approval, create automatically the service call, attach the quote, attach the equipment and tasking and material items, all in one kind of automated process. So that's what I'm going to take you through today. So I'm going to take you through scenario one, which is me sitting in the office as a salesperson, and I had an email come in or a phone call from a new potential customer. They don't even exist yet today for us in our KEY2ACT system. And I'm going to create a recommendation and a quote from that. The second scenario I'll flip to after I go through that one is me being a tech out in the field, and I'm using it as a mobile device, and I follow through with creating a new quote for an existing customer for an existing piece of equipment, and follow through with creating a quote and service call from that. So I log into the application website here, and all of these modules tie into our core existing Quadra website. So This will be supported in any major web browser, Chrome, IE, Firefox, whatever. And when I log in, I get a bit of a dashboard here. And this just tells me, maybe how many new quotes, if I'm a tech, I've created recently, and how many recommendations I've turned into quotes, and how many got approved. Something that will drive me or motivate me as a user to use this application. And maybe there's some kind of reward system or commission base that's getting paid to the sales staff or the techs out in the field for these leads in this new business. So that's kind of what that's designed for. Where I may start off with is the email that came in from the customer here. It says, I'm Tim, this is my detail here. I need a quote to replace this unit. It's a train, whatever, and a picture of it. And I respond and say, sure, I'll give you a quote for that. So based off of that information, because the customer does not exist yet, I'm going to create a new, what we call prospect customer, in order to give them a quote. So the name, I could cut and paste a lot of this stuff. It was XYZ Corp, and it was 123 whatever street. So XYZ Corp, and I'm just going to cut and paste this stuff in quick, 123 Delaware Street, and the country, US, and the province, we'll just say is Ohio, and the city is Port Huron. Some basic information that we would need to add that you'd want to, because upon approval, all of this information ends up going in automatically after review directly into the service module. So I fill out my basic stuff. As part of the application, what it will do, what it has intelligence to do, is to automatically mark up your material items based off of your pricing matrix, as well as automatically update and use the sale rates that you've agreed to upon with your existing customers by their specific location. In this case, it's a new customer, a new potential customer, so I'm just choosing from an existing labor rate group that I had in our KEY2ACT setups. So I'm doing that for that, and again for my price matrix, and I'm going to go ahead and add this new XYZ Corp. So it's now showing me the customer and the new address, and from this summary screen here, I get to see if this was an existing customer, which you'll see shortly. I would see all their existing equipment. In this case, they don't have any, and also I could see any recommendations we've given to them or any quotes previously. In this case, because again it's new, I'm going to go in here and add a recommendation. So this was to, maybe it started out to replace the fan motor, or what I can do is set up some general templates of normal recommendations that my company does on a regular basis, so that, again, if this is a tech out in the field using this, it'll save him time in creating the recommendation. A lot of the times their hands are dirty or they're wearing gloves, and it's not the easiest thing to be pulling at your phone and typing things. So the idea is that I can choose from a number of templates that I already have. If I didn't have one, I could just type whatever I want. But then the benefit to that is it's pulling in the benefits for doing that type of work. And this can get relayed to the customer as the tech is creating his recommendations to them, so they understand why they should do this work. What is the benefit to them paying for this this new service work that's being proposed and quoted to them. So it'll pull in automatically the benefit. I'm then going to put in some details here. Customer emailed in asking for a quote, to replace the unit. Any other details I want. And from there, now I've essentially started my, what we call recommendation. So at the top, it has a listing of the equipment that it's for, the description, the details, what the benefits are. And on the bottom half here is where I can start to add the actual inventory or labor items, as well as upload some audio, take some pictures or videos. Aside from the equipment and recommendation detail, I get to see the customer and kind of where the status of this recommendation is at. So the first thing I'm going to do here as well is just type in a bit of the equipment detail that has to do with this, again, recommendation that I'm creating. So I'll call it some train rooftop unit, And again, these are the fields that you see here are fields that you would need to or be available to you if you were creating new equipment in KEY2ACT in the service module. So these are just, again, we're capturing kind of the minimum requirements. A lot of these are auto lookups that's coming from my KEY2ACT setups. So this was a train, let's say XL furnace, the Makis train. Again, these are all coming from our equipment setups within service. This was in the basement, or it's in the rooftop, I guess. And the model is an XL90. And I don't have to put in all these details. So again, I'm just putting in maybe some extra stuff here. I don't know when it was installed or whatnot. And I just want to add that equipment. So now I've got the basic description of what this recommendation is about, the piece of equipment, and maybe some items that I want to now add to this. So I'm going to start off with, maybe I'll do a more complex one this time, and then when the tech's doing it, I'll do a more simplistic one. So I could be grabbing individual labor types and the hours, or I could be grabbing, you know, like the new fan motor or the whole furnace itself. Or I can build in our estimating software to make it easier for sales staff who maybe don't know all the details of what's involved in replacing this unit. I could just say, well, this is a 2-ton unit, 2 to 3 ton rooftop unit. And automatically I've already templated to say, well, I need a mechanical apprentice for 12 hours to do that, and a journeyman, and this is the carrier that we're going to replace it with, and the quantity. It needs a condenser, a compression fittings, and some optional items here. I could say, well, is it the 2-ton or the 3-ton? And if it's actually the 3-ton unit, well, then you need to be aware as a salesperson that that's going to involve a crane as well then, and a driver, and an engineer. And so you can template these packages together to take a lot of that guesswork out. Again, whether it's the tech that's quoting this information or as new sales staff that's kind of green and doesn't know all those details. So I could do that, and it automatically will now add all those things, as well as I've set it up to say, well, if you're going to choose to select this compression fitting, purchasing needs to know the compression size. So as a user, whether I'm a tech or a salesperson, I need to finish selecting this additional detail, you know, with the type here, is it male to male or female to male or whatnot. I need to answer these questions, and you can make these mandatory or not. It's really up to you and your setups if you want additional questions to be answered by the users of the software so that purchasing has all the details they need. So now what I get is a nice detail here of the estimate that I've now started, all of the parts and labor hours and crane rentals and equipment that I may need, what their sale price is in their quantities, and again, I can change these quantities if I need to. I can maybe click on any one of these and maybe adjust its markup or override it depending on what my permissions will allow me to do. And once I'm said and done that, basically I can go back to my recommendation now and move forward with sending this to the customer as saying, I'm recommending this, or in this case, it was a call that came in asking for a quote. So I'm going to flip that right to a quote. So for this one that I've started with this prospect customer, it's showing me any recommendations that haven't been part of a quote so far, and I could choose one or many. In this case, it's just one. And again, this was to replace the furnace or rooftop unit. And it knows who I am as a salesperson based off of my Quadra setups. So that's actually choosing a real salesperson that's set up in the KEY2ACT software. From there, I can review this and you know, take a look at the quote that I'd started. Maybe I want to just look at my markups overall as a summary and do some further adjustments there for those. Maybe this should be more like 50% markup. Do my final tweaking and basically send off or email the customer with this quote attached. And there's a lot of different ways we can generate the quote for the customer. Just as another option in here, we have a full quote generator, which you can have different templates to generate the actual quote letter for the customer and what it will look like. So depending on if you guys have, as a company, just one standard quote, we can set that up as a template that it will automatically create. And so what you would do is choose your letterhead and then your standard template that you guys have for your service proposals. And it's going to pull in today's date, who the customer was, attention to, you know, the piece of equipment that maybe you're working on, all of those things. If you have them templated, I could, you know, add some more details in here, pull in the price and say, you know, it's me signed in, date and sign here, and here's, you know, our whole legal stuff. And then print this off. So I can save and download that. Every time I create a new quote letter for the customer, it saves that indefinitely to the software. And, you know, very quickly, I now have a full quote that's done all the math and no more human error behind the scenes to calculate dollar amounts and whatnot. And this can really look however you want. So once that's completed, basically I would either get an email back from the customer after I emailed them, so I could click here and I can email the customer with this detail and the quote attached. And the email's been sent. And as I'm going and progressing through all of these stages, I see that a new quote has been created and ready for my review. These can all set up to go to different email groups within your company, whether it's going to purchasing or going to managers for approval or whatnot. Once that has been completed and the internal approval has been done, and I've emailed the customer and they've accepted the quote letter that I've created, I can now either you know, just accept and approve it myself that the customer has completed it, and I can literally sign off on it here and say that I approved it due to the customer emailing back saying proceed. I can also have some additional custom questions that I may need to answer. In my case, I created an additional, just a user-defined field called customer PO. Our company's process is to gather that information and ensure that we have a PO number. Beyond that, I can now just continue on with creating my service call. So again, these problem types, they're all problem types that are coming from my current setups. The division that it's for, the salesperson that knows already the call type, and the equipment, the new piece of equipment, it knows the new technician, or some other ones maybe I want to assign this to for today. And then I choose from my existing service tasks that I want to associate this piece of equipment and material items with for this service call. So now the service call has been created. It confirmed that it has and the number for it. And if I flip back into right into the service manager, XYZ customer, I believe it was, that we created. So here's the new customer that it auto-generated for me. Here is the address details that it created. Here's the service call that it created. And all the details surrounding that. There's the piece of equipment that it created, the new Train XL furnace. There's the technician that I assigned it to at today's date, and as well as having the quote letter attached with the 10% and 50% markups and our billable rate versus what our costs are. So that's kind of the whole process if I was using this app as a, you know, a salesperson in the office fielding incoming calls or whatnot. Let's pretend now that I'm actually a tech out in the field instead, and I'm using this as a, let's just pretend I have a iPhones as my fleet device and hardware. So I'm a tech out in the field now, and I now have you know, some things maybe I want to look up as a user. So I have a quick menu. I can see my permissions as a user, what I can and can't do. Can I create equipment and customers? Maybe I can't. Maybe I can't create quotes, but I can create recommendations, and that's just how we're set up. So based off of that, again, I would take me back to my dashboard. Maybe I have this showing me how many, you know, new quotes or dollars I've got approved this month in compared to the other techs that I'm competing against for this $500 gift card at the end of the month. Whatever it is, this is a dashboard that you can customize that can be used for the internal staff as well to see these pending quotes as they come in they can, shortcut right to them, or pending recommendations that are basically these leads coming into the sales office. So I'm going to start off with just going right to looking up maybe an existing customer, and I've got a lot of different fields here, and this will look up any existing customers that we have. I could choose to, look it up by the street address. I can hit this GPS icon. If I'm already on a service call, it'll automatically put in the address that I'm at, and I can hit search, and it'll find the customer that I'm at. There's a lot of other field searches that I can go based off of here. Based off of me typing in auto, it found that I have an existing customer called YZ Auto Parts, and this could be the customer I'm already at doing this service call. So I can look at all the pieces of equipment that they have currently, and I can choose to select one to create a service call for. I can see any existing recommendations that are out, and maybe I want to filter on it. I just want to see ones that have been quoted so far to know that I'm not re-quoting something that another tech maybe already did last week or yesterday when he was here. I don't see one for the problem I'm experiencing, and so now I can go ahead and create a new recommendation. So maybe this is some kind of general inspection that I'm going to do, or maybe it's a any one of these templates that I have for the types of recommendations that I can do. So I see an issue while on the roof with your condenser, whatever the issue may be. So again, I'm starting off and creating this recommendation. That may be as far as I go, depending on my company's workflow. I may just notify the office that I've got a new lead for the sales staff to come and take a look at, and they got automatically the email alert to say, hey, a new recommendation has come in. Click here to review it. I click there, and it takes me directly to my home screen and my dashboard as a user to show me these pending recommendations that's come in. And I could take over from here and contact the customer and continue on with creating the quote. Or again, I'm just going to pretend as if I'm a tech and I have the authority to continue with this. So I can notify the customer and say, hey, I'm recommending you do this. He may or may not say, yeah, give me a quote for that. So at the very least, it may be my internal process to, at least as a tech, add whatever pictures or images to back up this detail. And the office staff, they want me while I'm here to at least get the parts that I think, or the hours that I think it may take to complete this work. So maybe again, it's some kind of compression fitting, and I say the quantity that I need. Again, these markups will be automatic. I didn't choose a customer that had default markups according to the price matrix. And it's just asking me, I've set it up to ask some additional questions here. And then maybe I want to also just say, hey, I'm a journeyman. This is probably going to take me, 3 hours to correct. Again, I could say how many hours, and I could add that to my recommendation. At that point, it's going to show me that I've emailed. Any history that I've done, emailing back and forth between the office of the customer would be here. And so I send it off, and he said, yeah, give me a quote for that. So I click, go right to generating the quote. I go ahead and maybe add a bit more detail. Maybe I add some kind of discount to this. I can add more items if I'd like. Maybe I made a mistake, or maybe I just want to adjust the hours for this quote, or maybe the overall markup. And again, this is all dependent on my user permissions and what I'm allowed to do or not. You can set it up that I can't even see pricing information or cost, depending on the tech. So I go through my internal approval. It sends an email to the office, letting them know I've got a new quote that I'd like to send to the customer. It's less than my $1,000 limit, so I actually don't need somebody from the office to approve it. And I'm still in front of the customer. I email the customer the details of the quote. He gets the letter, and he says, yeah, go forward with that. My heat's out. I need it fixed right away. The whole purpose of this ability to create a quote out in the field is to shorten that turnaround time. Instead of waiting, days while a customer is without heat or whatnot, and they go and find another quote for another customer, this is going to allow you to literally, while you're on site with the customer, literally have them sign off on the screen. They can put their customer name and hit save, and you've literally got everything you need. The customer has approved it. It's now locked down, this quote. It's read-only, and it's now sent an email off to your dispatch team in the office. And again, or you allow your techs to literally follow through with creating the service call, and it's going to end up on the dispatch board to continue on and distribute the work. So again, I go through, some of the things are defaulted automatically, and some of the things it requires you to ask a few more questions, and I confirm for creation. Oh, I double booked that technician. So there's some good error handling in there. Let me just choose a different tech. And it's now told me that the service call has been created. And so that was for an existing customer for some kind of YZ auto parts store. And so here's the new one here that I just created for myself. And again, the same kind of detail flows through, and it's now auto-created my call and all the quote detail. And it's now essentially back on the dispatch board, and the techs or the dispatch crew could see that I'm still on site with the customer and basically redispatch it to me, and it's now back in mobile tech, and I flip back to that to complete that work. So those are kind of the two scenarios and how we foresee most people using this app, but it is, as you can see, very dynamic. You can use it from the office, from the field, or a combination of. And I think at this point we can open up the floor to some questions, if there are any.
We don't have any questions at this time, Mike.
Great. Well, that makes my timing perfect. I went a little longer than I thought that I may. So, by all means, I did go pretty quick to try and cram in as much of that information in there as I could. But by all means, if there's any additional questions that you guys come to or think of, I'd be more than happy to answer them in the future for you.
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. Thanks to all of our attendees for joining us. If you have any questions, as Mike said, feel free to reach out to him, but also feel free to reach out to your CSM here at KEY2ACT. As I mentioned earlier, our session today was recorded, so we'll send that out to all of our registrants as soon as it's available. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Emily.